Welcome to the iPad Possibilities Podcast, episode 37, AirVideo and WWDC 2010 predictions. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this podcast, the developers of the iPhone application. It's on my way. It's available in the App Store now for $2.99. And as I've talked about before, this app allows you to quickly plan out your afternoon as you go from point A to point B to point C, and it finds the quickest way to get from those places and back home. So if you want to save time, you can do that now in the App Store for $2.99 with the app. It's on my way. Well, welcome once again to another episode of the iPad Possibilities Podcast. And before we get the show started, I'd like to say this show will be a little bit different than the normal live Sunday show that you get every Monday or Tuesday. We did have the show on Sunday, but it turned out there was a bunch of scheduling conflicts with both Ryan, John, and even Chris. All three of them had some stuff come up, so this is actually a re-recording of the information I went over on Sunday night, and hopefully it'll go a little bit better this time than it went on Sunday night, as there were a lot of stops and starts I had to do with all sorts of technical things going on. But with that said, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for your time once again for listening to this podcast. And without further ado, I'd like to jump into kind of the stories of the week, kind of the top two I saw. The first one was a commercial that Apple started airing. And the reason this caught my eye, it is very reminiscent of the old Newton commercials, kind of introducing what the Newton was. The music sounds the same, the voice of the narrator sounds pretty much the same, and kind of the style of the commercial mirrored that exactly with the old Newton commercials that they had in the mid-90s. And that was a very cool little revelation that people had, because it was rumored that Steve Jobs really hates the Newton. So it was a very cool thing to see and kind of compare the two commercials, and as this is kind of the Newton of our generation, a much more powerful Newton, but the Newton of the 2000s, it's kind of cool that they paid a tribute to the Newton with that commercial. The next article and story that I'd like to talk about is something I saw on the Mac Observer. And the Mac Observer had an article called the 17-inch iPad. Oh my God, that's the title of the article. And what this article is all about is the imagining of what it would be like and why Apple would create a larger screened iPad. And John, the writer of this article, hints back to or talks about the iPod mini and how they only updated it once and then replaced it and obsoleted it with the iPod Nano. And he thinks a similar thing will happen, I guess, with the iPad, but I don't think he means it the same way, because I think the screen iPad that we have now will always be around or something close to it. But it is cool to think about what would happen with a larger screened iPad. I don't think that would be the only size iPad we have, because I think the mobility of this 10-inch screen is amazing. And having it 17 inches would get rid of all mobility, unless it was like a foldable screen or something like that. But I think a 17-inch screen would be an amazing device to have. Why would this be amazing? Well, here's some reasons that John gives, and I agree with him on most of these points here. First off, more practical board games, right? Because right now, the screen's large on the iPad, but you don't really get the full-size screen of what you would expect out of a board game. You can get very good experiences out of Scrabble and Monopoly and some games like that. But imagine what it would be like with a 17-inch screen. Imagine how much more in-depth, how much more amazing it would be to have board games on nearly a double the size screen of a 17-inch iPad. Imagine how wonderful a gaming and board gaming experience that would be, right? Because on a 10-inch screen, you're kind of limited, right, on what you can do with board games. But with a 17-inch screen, imagine the possibilities there that emerge. The next reason he gives that he believes that a 17-inch iPad would be in the works is a full-size keyboard that's more forgiving of finger placement. Now, this is interesting because the iPad has a good-sized keyboard. I would compare it to a netbook-sized keyboard, right? But with a 17-inch screen, they could make it a full keyboard, right? A laptop-sized keyboard or even a desktop-sized keyboard, right? So with that, you could have even better usage of a keyboard, faster input, and all of those great things. It could be called like the desktop iPad, right? You have a desktop-sized keyboard, desktop-sized screen, and with this, it could become the desktop iPad that just stays on your desk or on your coffee table or whatever the case may be. Another great thing that would come about from that is they could have a larger bezel that you could actually rest your wrists on, right? So currently you have to kind of hover above the screen when you're typing and all sorts of things like that. But imagine with a larger bezel, you could actually have your wrist setting down on that bezel where it doesn't touch the screen, and you could type out comfortably some large documents without the need of a Bluetooth keyboard. And this is something I think Apple would love to have, because I don't think Apple wants people to be using external keyboards all of their lives on their iPads. I think they eventually want people to just be typing on the screen. And I think a larger screen iPad would solve that kind of problem they have. Some other reasons that John gives are larger text in pages that's easier to edit. That'd be great. Larger text in ebooks for the visually handicapped, which would be great. You can do that now, but it makes it kind of awkward as far as how many words fit on the page. With the larger screen, you can fit more words on a page with larger text. It'd be great. Even more exciting action games is another reason he gives. Architect and drawing programs become realistic. That would be fantastic. As I'm not an architect, but as others are, I could see that being a huge possibility for those wanting to go into that avenue with applications. And finally, his reason is breathtaking 1080p video. Now imagine that, having this great huge screen, high quality, and now you got 1080p video that is supported natively on this iPad. So that's a very cool possibility that I could see happening with the second and third generation iPads. I think Apple will push ahead faster than we ever thought they would with devices such as a larger screen iPad, faster iPads, and all sorts of amazing things like that. Imagine, fuller, bigger maps that you're able to do more with. And I could see some just special things that emerge with the future of the iPad, with larger devices and, iPads being full replacements for TVs in dorms or teenager bedrooms, and construction sites using these as blueprints, and military armies using these for battlefield maps. And the potential just continues to go on and on with what a larger screen iPad could do. So I think we will see this once again. I think Apple will impress us with a large screen iPad, and they'll make it in a way that's not cumbersome to use or anything like that. So if you want to check out that full article, you can do that at the Mac Observer. Once again, it's macobserver.com. And once again, it's called the 17-inch iPad. Oh my God. So that's the title, and check it out there. So I wanted to, before we move on to kind of the main content of the show, that is the AirVideo update and WWDC, is give you some observations I've had with iBooks. Now, I have been pleasantly surprised by just how great it really is. I thought that I didn't like reading much with paper books, right? I did read some. I've read, the Harry Potter books and all those books, and I have a pretty large collection of books, around 200 books that I've purchased and read over the past 2 or 3 years. So I do read quite a bit, and I never thought I would really enjoy the experience of reading books on, the iPad. I've never been one to read on the iPhone full books or whatever. But I've started this little experiment. I purchased the Lord of the Rings. You're able to purchase within iBooks, the iBook store, or even the Kindle store for the same price. It's $15 for all 3 books, kind of in one book as it was originally intended, I believe. So I've got the Lord of the Rings. It's 2,700 some odd pages. And I've been reading quite a bit. And I've finished the first book out of the 6 books that makes up the Lord of the Rings. And I'm on the second half of the Fellowship of the Ring. I've read over 500 pages now in iBooks. And I have to say, it is a great experience. Much better than paper. First off, you don't have the awkwardness of having a huge book that feels awkward as you have most of your pages on the right side of your hand, and as you progress through the book, that switches, and when you're in the middle of the book, it's good to hold it because it's balanced on both sides. And then towards the end, you're in the same position where you have a bunch of pages on one side and you're trying to hold it up. But with iBooks, it's great because you don't have the awkwardness of trying to hold this book that's constantly changing how thick it is in various parts of how you're holding it. Secondly, it makes knowing how far along you're in the book that much easier as far as chapters, because at the bottom of the screen, it tells you, hey, you've got 25 more pages, or how many more pages you have left. When I read, most of the time I'll just hold the chapter in my hand and kind of get a take for it that way, but that takes time and takes you out of the reading experience, just trying to figure out how close you are to finishing that chapter. And I have to say that with books, you have a different reading experience every time, right? Because each book is printed differently. The size of the pages are different on every single book. And the quality of the paper is different on every single book. Now with iBooks, we finally have a unified reading experience where every single book I'll pick up, I'll read, will have a very similar experience because the size of the page or screen, if you will, is the same exact size. And it's a much better experience, I found. So if you haven't started reading with iBooks, I'd say give it a shot. I've talked to those that are people that have used Kindle and Nooks and things like that, and they give me the argument that it's not e-ink or whatever they call it, right? Where it's more paper-like. And I have to say I've never read an ebook with a Kindle, but I would have to say I'd probably not like that experience as much. First off, I've heard the load times and the pages are quite long. I've heard you can't jump around as easily in the books. I've heard they say it's more paper-like, but I have to say the iBooks, it emulates the paper so much better with the page turns and the realism of it just looking like a book. And also the fact that you have to turn on a light to look at books if you're using a Kindle. You don't have any backlighting at all. And another great thing about iBooks is I store a lot of music on my iPad, and I've got the complete Lord of the Rings soundtrack set on there. And I've never experienced this before in reading, where the book itself becomes the soundtrack for the book you're reading. So with iPod built into it, and the great speaker they have built into it, it vibrates. It helps the book come alive because of the music that you're able to play from that same device. I don't believe Kindle has this or Nook has this, at least in the easy way that Apple does it. But the built-in audio player is a killer feature that, because it's on the iPad, it makes it that much better. So I have to say, reading with iBooks in the iPad is amazing, and I can't wait to see what they do with the mobile version of it on the iPhone and how it'll all sync up wirelessly. I can't wait until they enable that, because that'll also enable iPads to sync up book content wirelessly and all that. And I have to say, it's just a great experience. I'm very happy with it. And also, for those that don't know, if you end up deleting your books, within the iBooks app itself, you can re-download. It tells you all of your purchases you've ever had on iBooks from any of your devices, and you're able to re-download it right there. It actually tells you what books you're able to re-download for free. And I think that's another great feature that I think Apple should implement with the App Store. Right now, you're able to download your apps again and again, if you remember which one those are, for free. I'd love if they had a tab on the App Store that tells you, hey, you've purchased these 100 apps. You can download these at any time. I wish they enabled that. It would be a great thing, but I'm certainly glad they did that with iBooks. So those are just some thoughts on iBooks and my just astonishment as how I could read through 500 pages within a few days and it being such a great experience. So I just wanted to share those thoughts on iBooks with everybody. So now on to some updates that have been coming out this week. And the first updates were that to iWork. Apple finally released some updates to the iWork suite on the iPad, bringing it up to version 1.1. And the biggest one of this was that of Pages. After many complaints by many reviews, Pages finally supports horizontal toolbars. Now, this is something that has been long missing that really puts it down to productivity as you're trying to write a paper. All you can do when you're in horizontal mode in the past was simply enter text. And now you can finally edit your paper in horizontal mode. And that is a great thing that Apple finally got out of its stubborn ways and finally saw the error of their ways and how bad of a user interface that really was. So I'm glad they did that. And I'm excited to see what else they'll start to change and enhance with Pages. I'm very excited to see what will happen with Pages 2 and Pages 3 and as they go through the different versions and see what else they add and see how close they can get it to a desktop equivalent of software. So that's one very cool update that happened this week. Now, the biggest update of this week, I don't think was Pages, but rather that of AirVideo. Now, this is something I've talked about quite frequently and imagined what it would be like if AirVideo had the ability to export that video signal out to an external monitor, a TV or projector, and what that would mean for consumers. Well, it's finally here. It's something that I've wanted and asked for a long time, and you're able now to hook up a VGA adapter, a component cable, a composite cable, a projector, whatever it may be, to the iPad while in AirVideo. And when that happens, that video is now on your TV screen or your projector. And what this means is any video that you have stored on your computer, any file type, it could be AVI, it could be all sorts of files that aren't natively supported on the iPad. And they could be really high-res stuff that can't get on the iPad anyways. And you no longer have to worry about storage size of your iPad because it streams it all over. It's not synced over. Plus, now you don't have to worry about what did I sync over? Is it not on the iPad now? And now you have, for all practical purposes, an Apple TV replacement. The Apple TV is a great little set-top box that you plug into your TV that streams your iTunes library to your TV. Now, this is even more powerful because you can use any video type. You don't have to go through iTunes. And it does live conversion on the spot to your iPad and now to your TV set. So now, instead of, Mac, entertainment systems or Windows entertainment systems with a Windows Media Center, you can now have an iPad hooked up to your TV as that media center, as that device that displays your content. And you can do it, I think, in a slicker solution than you ever have in the past. Because now you don't need all that wiring to make sure you're wired up via Ethernet or powered up or anything like that, because the iPad has such a great battery inside of it. So you might ask, how does this all work? Well, all you do is, if you're an AirVideo user, download the update. And if you have any one of Apple's recent cables or even some third-party cables, for example, I have a Pico projector. And this is a great little Pico projector they sell to Apple stores for $200. And what it does is it's just a mini projector. It works great in pitch black, perfect darkness, but not so well with light. So at night, it's a fantastic experience. I'm able to hook up my Pico projector to my iPad. And from there, I've got a huge, 30 to 60 inch, more like 60 inch where I use it, TV now just on the wall. And it's brilliant. Great quality. And another cool thing, and AirVideo tops that of the built-in Apple player, because when you do this with the built-in player, you have to leave that screen on. If you turn the screen off with the built-in video player on the iPad, the video will stop playing back, even if you're hooked up to an external TV or whatever. But with AirVideo, once you start playing it back, you can instantly turn off the screen and it continues to go. Now, this is a plus for many people, first off, so you don't accidentally touch anything on the screen. Secondly, it saves battery power because one of the biggest drawers of power that the iPad has is that screen. So by turning that off, you don't have to worry about your battery being drained that much. All the power is coming from is that Wi-Fi being turned on and being used rather a lot. So that's the biggest battery drain, but the screen is turned off, and that is enabled with that. So what this means is you can simply just have your Mac or Windows machine up and running and have all your videos there, and it doesn't matter what folder they're in as long as you've told AirVideo to look there. You can just play them back on your TV or projector, and you now have all the media you would ever need instantly there on your iPad. And this brings the possibility of converting your home theater system to include an iPad as one of the main components that feeds you all of your needs for video. It's an amazing thing, and I'm very excited that it's working and up and running with TV output. And I'm kind of glad the way Apple did this, where developers actually have to code this to make it work with TV output, because it forces developers to do this in a way that makes sense. Because right now with AirVideo, you can actually navigate through all your videos and see what else you might want to watch after you're done with that. But if they just did a simple mirroring, you would have to have that iPad screen be used for video playback as well. So the way Apple's done this is they've done it really well, where, hey, you have to code for it. You have to do this really great. And once you do that, you can have TV output. So that was another huge update that I wanted to spend a good deal amount of time with. That, yes, AirVideo works. It works with Pico projectors. It works with TV output and all those great things. And grab it today, and it really brings the iPad into another class of home entertainment devices that I think will kind of revolutionize many people's homes. So from there, I want to move on to some WWDC predictions. So WWDC is the worldwide developer conference that Apple puts on every year for their developers. And this year, they're moving away from the Mac and focusing on mobility with the iPad and the iPhone. So I wanted to spend a few minutes here and simply discuss some predictions I have. And after WWDC, we'll see if I was right or if I was wrong. And these are just iPad-focused predictions. And WWDC, if you don't know, happens this June 7th through June 11th. So less than a month away, we will be seeing and hearing all these announcements from Apple. They have a keynote that launches the event, and that we do get to watch, but the rest of the sessions are closed off to developers. But my predictions, first off, Apple will announce some updates on sales. So they've announced that they've sold 1 million iPads, and they announced that a while back. And I think by the time WWDC rolls around, we'll be up to the 2.2 million marker. They will have sold that many iPads. That's my guess, and we'll see if I'm right there. My reason for guessing that is if they sold 1 million the first month, they will still sell over 1 million the next month with the worldwide launch and the 3G launch and all those great things. So that's my prediction, 2.2 million. Now, my next prediction is that we will see a different version of iPhone OS 4.0 demoed at their keynote. They will have what they call iPad OS 4.0. And with this, they will show off some printer support. They will show off a more robust file system where you're able to save documents back into apps like Dropbox. So you don't have to do the silly things like export it and have different versions of the same file because you can't save back to it. So I think that will be solved in this update and announcements at 4.0. And I think we might even see a different interface for multitasking on the iPad. They might do something totally different. They might do the same thing, but I think we'll see something different with multitasking. I'm not sure what, but I think we'll have some announcements there. And I think a couple of other things. I think iTunes Live, which has been patented by Apple, will be demoed at their keynote. And I think the part that they'll demo, iTunes Live could mean many things. It could just mean live concerts that are played in iTunes. It could mean live recordings that are saved and sold in iTunes. But I think in this case it means that iTunes will now be able to stream your library to your iPad anywhere in the world via this iTunes Live. And they'll do that through the built-in iPod app, where you're able to just go to your iTunes Live section and it sees all of your music and is able to stream it all to you. And I think that'll be a huge announcement for both the iPhone and the iPad, that you'll be able to have access to everything you've purchased through iTunes on your iPad, streaming down to you. And I think that'll be a huge announcement and a great thing that the iPad and iPhone really desperately need, in my opinion. It's kind of like a Pandora of all of your purchases. So I think that's a very cool thing. So another kind of thought is, I think Hulu will have a presence at this conference. I think they'll demo their app for the iPad, and that will be that's my kind of dark horse wild shot prediction. But I think Hulu will be on stage demoing their app for the iPad, and they'll have some sort of subscription service to do that. And I also think that iPad 4.0 OS will be announced, that they'll have a developer preview available that very day, June 7th, and they'll be shipping in the fall as they announced. I think they are finally done wrapping up the betas of the iPhone OS by the time WWDC rolls around. And by that time, they're going to be ready for developers to start testing the iPad version of that OS. So I think that will all be happening this summer at this conference, this year's WWDC. Now, before I wrap up the show, I'd like to just go over one last thing. What we do every Sunday night are, picks of the week. And I wanted to give my pick of the week, even though I'm not here with a live show. But Magic Window is and has been an incredible application that was also updated this week. And what Magic Window is it reminds me a lot of, I'm not sure if you've seen Aliens, but when Sigourney Weaver gets back to the base station, she sits in this park and it looks like she's outside, but really she's inside with a huge screen that kind of emulates the outside. And what this app does, it does that same thing. It kind of emulates the outside with these living pictures. It's kind of Harry Potter-like, where these images aren't just static. They move and adjust as time goes by to do sunsets or city scenes and all sorts of things. So it comes with a bunch of different scenes. I'm trying to count here, 3, 6, 9, 12. It looks like it comes with 15 different scenes that you can adjust how fast it goes through the scenes or how slow. And you can have music playing with it. You can have a clock on it and all sorts of other things. But it is a great little app to just have running as you're working on your computer or reading a book or whatever you want. But it's a great app that it's really that digital picture frame taken to that next level. A level of where it feels real. It feels like it's a living image, a living, breathing picture frame. So it's a great app, and other people I've talked to love it as well. It is currently $3.99. It's on sale today. Normally it's $4.99, but I think it's well worth the money, even at $5, which is what I believe I paid for it. And it's one of those apps that just I think should be on every iPad, because it's one of those apps that when you're not using the iPad, it's a great thing to just have up and running to kind of give you a better experience, just a nice environment thing. It's like having a plant in the room, right? So that's Magic Window. It's $3.99 today, but it might be $4.99 by the time you listen to this. and that's my pick of the week. So that wraps up this episode of the iPad Possibilities podcast. Before I take off here, I'd like to just mention once again, I always appreciate feedback. You can do that both in email and in the voicemail box by just calling in. You can email me at iPadPossibilities@gmail.com and call in at 209-542-iPad or 4723 if you don't have the alphabet there on your keyboard. If you would like to find out more information about this show and other shows, just simply go to thepossibilitiesnetwork.com, and there you can find all the information about the live show we do every Sunday night, or most Sunday nights, and you can find out all the information about the premium show and some other podcasts we do as well. So check that out at thepossibilitiesnetwork.com. If you would like to support this show through iTunes, you can do that by reviewing the show and rating this show. That is something that I wish more people would do, because it really does help bring the visibility of this show up in iTunes so others can discover it and appreciate it as you have. If you'd like to support the show monetarily, there's a couple different ways you can do that, but the best way to do that is by becoming a member of the premium podcast. It's only $2 a month, and what does that mean? What do you get for that? Well, first off, you get ad-free versions of all the shows. I do a separate, different version of the shows that are ad-free. You get the shows Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, just like the podcast app, but these are ad-free versions of the show. You get special video episodes that aren't available anywhere else, not even in the podcast app itself. You'll get HD versions of the video shows that are in the podcast app. You'll get special member audio episodes that only are released to you as a member of the podcast, the premium podcast. So if you can't get enough of this podcast, become a premium member, and you'll get a bunch more by doing that. So that's the best way to support the show monetarily. You can do that by simply going to thepossibilitiesnetwork.com and clicking on the sidebar iPad Possibilities Premium Podcast. And there it'll guide you through PayPal for just $2 a month. Very low cost. I wanted to do that so everyone who wanted to support the show could. And just go there and become a premium member today, and I'll get you all set up on that membership. So any support there would be greatly appreciated. We also have the iPad Possibilities Podcast application available in the App Store for $2.99. And with that app, you get the shows Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you also get a couple extra video shows that aren't included on the regular feed. And if you would like to support the show, there's a couple of different ways you can do that on the Possibilities Network as well. We are partnering up with Audible, and you can donate directly to the show there. So just go to thepossibilitiesnetwork.com to check out some more ways that you can support this podcast and the Possibilities Network. So I would like to thank you again for your time, and thank you for listening. This is Tim Chatton of the iPad Possibilities Podcast. I will return with the Thursday show later this week. Until then, have a great day.